research with my colleagues was how is it like suddenly to find yourself under Russian bomb attacks, monstrous consequences for peaceful Russians, peaceful Ukrainian psyche. The research was made in terrible conditions because all our researchers and all the participants remained in the zone of Russian bomb attacks. And yes, of course, all the world it was against this horrible event. Monstrosity of Russian attack on Ukraine became a hot topic for global scientific community. Scientific world doesn't stand aside providing all assistance for Ukrainians. Foremost, this unjust war made great effect to mental health of innocent creatures. Russian attack has damaged the psyche of children and adolescents, depriving them of careful and happy childhood. So we decided to investigate their psyche, their state, psycho-emotional state, and all the situation in which they happened to be. As our review revealed, in scientific literature, practically all articles made just now, more precisely commentaries, demonstrative information, narrations, personal opinions, are presented in a descriptive, expository, elucidative form, with rightful appeals to stop this horrible Russian aggression. But importantly, to specify, no single study has examined the situation for peaceful civilians who unexpectedly came under monstrous bombardment. We made many we tried to contact many people as much as possible, Kharkovites who are living, who remained in city, because they didn't want to go away from the city. They didn't understand what was happening on around. And so it was impossible to use other methods like psychodiagnostics method, precisely, included observation and conversation with the participants, Kharkovites. The number was 585 persons, 77 children aged 15 years old, and 508 adults aged 24, 85 years old. We wanted to determine the characteristics of persons' reaction and behavior. All participants and researchers were constantly in Kharkov during the period of the first 3 months, beginning with the first day, 24 of April. The conversation method was used in a very delicate way in order to not to damage the psyche of the people. They were lost in the chaos, in some condition that it was impossible to explain, both for themselves, both for the researchers. First of all, we want to specify that such a research, it was made for the first time in the world. I didn't find in literature review any of research who wanted to examine the psycho-emotional state and mental state of the participants in the war condition, in the war situation. It is very difficult to stay in the war and conduct research. So it is this for the first time was made for us, by us. Each of the researchers and participants stayed all this period in Kharkiv. Collection of experimental data was conducted in parallel with providing concrete psychological assistance to the participants, since people were confused and they were incredible, dumbfounded, bewildered, didn't know what was happening next, what to do, where to go, where to run, where to hide, leave, spend the night, leave Kharkov forever or not. People needed to speak up, tell someone about what were going on and what they were feeling, and they asked for advice. Our results were as follows. First of all, we examined the situation in Kharkov. In the first 7 days, in the first week, the bombardment destructed many houses, infrastructure. Aggressor military attacked without regard to the lives of civilians and war laws. As a result of these attacks, houses in residential areas, 1/3, was damaged. Power stations, schools, kindergartens, etc. So the citizens were without water, gas, electricity. It was all damaged. The second factor we examined, traumatic stress factors that neurologically damaged the psyche of the people. They were in complete chaos with shocking pictures of destruction, death around them. They saw involuntary desire of participants to constantly follow the news about military events, getting involved in the war without their desire. They tried to follow these events through internet, social network, and they were in complete impossibility to go out of this. They were in, and so they were shocked twice. During the first 2 weeks, the shelling of Kharkov, the participants of the city, the citizens of the city was in awful situation. At the table 1, the slide number 4, you can see that we found and we decided to nominate 3 stages and 3 states of the participants: nervousness, constant emotional tension, abrupt mood fluctuations. And as you see, the younger participants were stressed more than the older ones. And it is awful. It was awful for their psyche. Participants were in a loss, unable to explain their state and feelings, didn't understand what was happening to them, what they felt even. They couldn't explain their own feelings, describe them. And so they felt many symptoms. the overall picture of emotional reaction to shelling is expressed in the following patterns. One, when moving from moving through the data tables, tables of the data from the left to the right, participants' response to the shelling factor becomes more and more emotionally balanced and less nervous, as I told previously. This cannot be explained with certainty about constant emotional tension. The prevalence of the tendency to be constantly emotionally tense has little to do with the age. So, according to the second indicator, the constant emotional tension, none of the groups prevails over any other in terms of the relative frequency of being chronically stressed. Perhaps this parameter, to a great extent than to the other two, is temporarily determined. The second, the nervousness and abrupt mood fluctuations indicators. The younger groups outperform older subjects. Comparison showed so among these two are older, the prevalence of nervousness and mood volatility is lower. Champions are the oldest participants. They could survive in such situation better, if it is possible to tell survive. Probably an explanation in the spirit of existential psychology, I'll tell in such a way, because they were coming to the end of their life and they were speaking with themselves that already lived, already has passed, so we may be calm. The third parameter we evidenced, there was demarked the time stages, which are similar to those kind of sensations that a person feels when losing loved ones, learning about a terrible medical diagnosis or some other grief. And feelings the Kharkivites experienced in the first 3 months, namely those: first, a denying unbelief, incomprehension, the first week of the war; second, fear, anxiety, panic during the second and third week; three, judgmental anger, hatred against the Russia. It was experienced at the end of the first and at the beginning of the second month. Four, they felt sadness, depression, loneliness, loss of control. It was evidenced in the middle and in the end of the second month. And finally, 5, hope, belief, patience, expectation as signs of acceptance, the acceptance of the situation and desire to cope with it. Only it was evidenced only at the end of the third and beginning of the fourth month. At the end, to normalize the psycho-emotional state of the participants, the psychological, non-pharmacological means of rehabilitation was identified. we choose one, physical activity, that is namely active participation in fulfilling some work, even cleaning the streets, etc., and gymnastics. Second, methods of self-rehabilitation, self-healing of the body, those like Reiki, yoga, meditation, even praying. Some children began to pray seeing their parents, and they were in underground, in some healing places. These ways of self-stabilization of the psyche means of training of memory, means of training thinking, imagination, that helps to diverse the attention from destroying events, from attacks, bombardment, and to think about something else. Altogether, these means allowed the participants to reduce the level of anxiety, stress, hopelessness, fatality, apathy, depression, and thereby improve mood, psycho-emotional, physiological state, and increase the level of self-regeneration, self-control, personal motivation for living even, will realization, goal information, and self-organization. A person often comes to the spontaneous application of elements of self-regulation techniques on his own. An internal natural mechanism of any person of self-defense was acted, which suggests prompt ways of self-regulation. These ways of self-preservation is acceptable, typical for both an adult and a child. It worked, as we saw. And in conclusion, I'd like to tell, because of unwillingness to fall under the status of a refugee abroad, and so many for many other reasons, a large part of Ukrainians, firstly Kharkivites, remained in their native cities and villages, becoming eyewitnesses who survived the rocket bomb attack in reality. As confirmed by our research, peaceful civilians remaining in war zones are exposed to terrible, unexpected psychic risks, being unable to absorb the war nightmare, cope with psycho-emotional overloads and social disasters. Psychotrauma also developed among those Kharkivites who constantly monitored military events through social internet networks, involuntarily becoming involved in severe psycho-emotional and physiological stress. Such negative manifestations of participants' mental states were revealed. Their evolution was traced, and the findings are as follows. Nervousness with increasing participants' age, the quantity who felt it decreased. So it was decreased from 75% to 30%. The second parameter, constant emotional stress with age slightly increased from 60 to 75%. And sharp change in mood with age slightly decreased, significantly decreased from 90 till to 12%. Children appear the most vulnerable, susceptible to all extremely dangerous psycho-emotional states, which may initiate pathological neurological somatic disorders in the body. From 90 to 55% of children compared to 75-12 of adults. With time, many participants had a need to imitate the former normal life. Thus, automatically protective defending body mechanism was switched on. So we helped it with our methods. Thank you for your attention. I am very glad you heard us.